Canada is planning to ground all flights by tomorrow if a deal isn't reached with flight attendants. Joining us now with some advice if you're one of the 130,000 passengers that are impacted is air passenger rights advocate Gabor Lucic. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Okay, so the big question for passengers whose flights are canceled or think that they are going to be canceled, are they eligible for a full refund?
That's a wrong question to ask. Don't take a refund. Air Canada wants you to take a refund and then hold it back for the extra expense of buying a ticket on a competitor airline. That's not what the law says. The law is that first and foremost, the airline has a legal obligation to provide you alternate transportation. Unfortunately, I've seen recently at least 2 cases where passengers received false and fraudulent emails telling them that there were no other flights available for them. And that's what Air Canada wrote them, and therefore their only option was a refund. That was false. We did a search, and there were flights available on other airlines, on competitor airlines. In one case, we found more than a dozen different options for the passenger to travel. What Air Canada is doing is they are trying to dissuade passengers by fraudulent, dishonest means from pursuing their right, exercising their right to alternate transportation. A refund is only a last resort if you really don't want to travel, but your fundamental right is to a rebooking. And if Air Canada is refusing to do that, then you are within your right to buy yourself a ticket and then send the bill to Air Canada. If they don't pay, you can go to Small Claims Court or in British Columbia, the Civil Resolutions Tribunal, and they are going to tell Air Canada to pay up.
It's such a difficult situation for people. They've already put money onto a ticket, and then now they may not get another flight paid for already for them, and so they have to pay for another ticket on another airline, and that's money out of pocket, and it may be quite some time before they get that refund. I mean, what advice do you have for people in that case?
I understand the challenge. I would still say that the best option is to incur the expense after Air Canada has proven that they are not fulfilling their legal obligations, and then hold Air Canada accountable. If you had to use a credit card and say you were charged high interest for your alternate transportation, these are expenses you incurred because of Air Canada's breach of contract, because of their breach of their legal obligations to you. And I would consider also suing for those expenses that you incur. I know that it's not an optimal solution. The source of the problem is that the government is not enforcing passengers' rights. Air Canada should not be able to get away with lying to passengers, with deceiving passengers the way it is trying to do now, and telling people, sorry, there are no flights for you, while in fact, the evidence shows that there are flights, and in some cases, even dozens of flights available to get the passengers home. Just that Air Canada doesn't want to pay thousands of dollars to another airline when it can try to trick passengers into taking a refund instead.
Yeah, it's got to be a bit of a juggling act for the airline. 130,000 passengers that could be impacted, and trying to figure out where else to put them. That's a big task unto itself. But for people who are
I don't have sympathy for airlines. You know, I don't have such sympathy. They have computer systems. They have had months and longer to prepare for such eventualities. And with computers, handling 130,000 passengers should not be a major task. That's why you have servers for. That's why you have computer farms for.
Okay, I want to ask you about if people are out of the country as this strike or the flight disruptions are happening. What happens to those people? Does the airline have an obligation to not only arrange a flight home, but to pay for the lodging while they're waiting for that to happen?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, in Canada, we have a broken passenger protection regime, and such obligation does not exist under Canada's own national regime, the air passenger protection regulations, once a strike begins. If a flight is canceled now, preemptively, yes, there is such an obligation, although Air Canada may refuse to do so anyway. If you're traveling internationally, then you are protected by the Montreal Convention, which is an international treaty that has the force of law in Canada. And it does impose liability on Air Canada for your meals, for your accommodation, and for even lost wages that you lose as a result of delays in air transportation. The only catch is that you first have to incur the expenses, and then you can demand Air Canada to pay for it.
Right.
Unlike the European regime, which requires them to provide you with meals and accommodation and so on upfront, The Montreal Convention is a liability regime. You first incur damages, then you sue for it.
Yeah, ultimately passengers are going to be out of pocket somehow. Gabriel Lucic, Air Canada or Air Passenger Rights Advocate, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.